Call came at 6:47 in the evening. I know the exact time because I'd been staring at the clock on my dashboard, calculating whether I could make it to the pharmacy before it closed at 7. I was 32 years old, a licensed physical therapist with a full caseload, a car payment, and a headache that had been sitting behind my right eye for 3 days straight. I figured it was stress. I figured I'd pick up some ibuprofen, go home, heat up whatever was left in the fridge, and be fine by morning. I did not make it to the pharmacy. The last thing I clearly remember is turning left onto Garfield and thinking the streetlights looked strange. Too bright, blurring at the edges. Then nothing. Then the sound of someone knocking on glass and a man's voice saying, "Ma'am? Ma'am, can you hear me?" I blacked out at the wheel. My car had drifted into a parked truck at low speed, which the paramedics later told me probably saved my life. The slow impact jolted me awake enough that I'd hit the brake. If I'd been going 45 instead of 15, the story would have ended differently. At the scene, one of the EMTs found my phone and scrolled to Mom and called her while they were loading me into the ambulance. I heard it distantly, the tinny sound of ringing, then my mother's voice picking up, bright and a little loud the way she always is on the phone. I couldn't hear what she said. I was fading in and out, but the paramedic relayed the situation. Her daughter had been in a car accident. She was conscious but disoriented. They were taking her to Mercy General. Could someone come? I closed my eyes. I thought, she'll be there when I wake up. My name is Vivienne, and I am the older of 2 daughters. My sister Lena is 28, 4 years younger than me, and she has been the center of my parents' universe for as long as I can remember. I don't say that bitterly. It's just true. Lena is the kind of person who fills a room, loud, and funny, and magnetic in a way I never was. I was always the quiet one, the responsible one, the one who did her homework without being asked, and saved her babysitting money, and got a partial scholarship to state school. Lena dropped out of community college twice, moved back home at 23, and works part-time at a boutique downtown that my mother refers to as Lena's little job, with a fondness she never uses when talking about my career. I have never been jealous of Lena exactly. Jealousy requires wanting what someone else has. I never wanted to be the favorite. I just sometimes wanted to not feel invisible. For 6 years after college, I sent money home. Not a huge amount. $200-300 a month when I could manage it. My parents weren't in financial crisis. But my dad's contracting work was unpredictable, and my mom hadn't worked full-time in 15 years. They never asked me directly. What they did instead was mention things. The water heater. The property taxes. How Lena needed new tires. I was the one who heard those mentions and did the math and sent a check. My sister never said to check. She was at home eating their groceries and running up their streaming subscriptions, and I don't think it occurred to anyone, including me for a very long time, that this arrangement was strange. I don't want to make myself sound like a martyr. I had a good life. I had a studio apartment I was proud of, a job I genuinely liked, a best friend named Courtney who made me laugh until I cried, at least once a week. I was fine. I thought I was fine. I just wish I had known sooner what my family actually thought of me. I regained full consciousness in the ER about 40 minutes after arriving. A nurse named, the badge said Fletcher, came in to take my vitals and asked me standard questions. What year is it? Who's the president? Can you follow my finger? I passed all of them. My head was pounding with a specific kind of pressure I'd never felt before, and my neck was stiff. But I was awake and I was coherent. She told me the doctor wanted to run a CT scan, possible concussion, possible something else. The blackout while driving was the part that concerned them more than the impact itself. Healthy 32-year-olds don't typically lose consciousness behind the wheel without a reason. Is there someone we can call? She asked. Emergency contact? I gave her my mother's number. Not because my mother was my official emergency contact. I'll be honest, I hadn't updated that form since I'd first filled it out 8 years ago. She was just the first person I thought of. The person you think of when you're scared. She told me she'd reach out. I lay back against the pillow and looked at the ceiling and thought, it's okay. She's coming. Whatever else is true, she'll come now. 6:58 p.m. The nurse told me she'd called and left a voicemail. My mother hadn't picked up. 7:14 p.m. She tried the number again. This time someone answered, my father, and she relayed the situation. He said they'd be on their way. 7:14 p.m. I know this because the nurse told me afterward. I was in the CT machine at 7:14, in that loud narrow tube with my head clamped still, trying not to think about how much it was going to cost. I came out of the scan at 7:40. My parents weren't there. I asked the nurse. She said the man she'd spoken to had said they were coming. I nodded. Okay. Traffic. It was a Wednesday evening, there was probably traffic. I waited. 8:12 p.m. Still no one. A different nurse came in to check on me, and I asked if there was any update. She checked the notes. No calls back, no one asking for me at the front desk. I picked up my phone, my screen was cracked from the impact, but it still worked. And I called my mother. She picked up on the third ring. "Vivi," she said, "how are you feeling?" The casualness of it hit me like a second collision. Not, "We're 5 minutes away." Not, "We're 5 minutes away." Not, "We've been so worried." Just, "How are you feeling?" The way you'd ask someone with a mild cold. "Mom," I said, "I'm at Mercy General. I was in an accident. They did a CT scan. I'm here alone." There was a pause. Then, in a lower voice, a sound like she was covering the phone, I heard her say something to someone nearby. I caught 2 words, "Lena," and "now." Then back to me. "Your father was going to go, but honey, Lena is having a really hard night." I didn't say anything for a moment. "A hard night," I repeated. "She got a letter from the DMV today. Her license is getting suspended. She had a citation from back in August that went to collections and she didn't know about it. And now there's a reinstatement fee and she's really spiraling, Vivi. You know how she gets." I knew how she got. "Mom," I blacked out while driving. "I don't know what's wrong with me yet. I'm in the hospital. Alone. You said you're okay though, right? You're talking to me." "I'm talking to you, yes. So it's probably just a concussion. You're in good hands. The doctors there are wonderful. Mercy General has a great reputation. Mom. Lena is really struggling right now, Vivi. The fee is almost $400 and she doesn't have it. And your father and I are trying to help her figure it out. It's a whole thing. We'll come tomorrow morning first thing, okay? Or tonight if you need something actually. If I need something actually. You know what I mean." I did know what she meant. She meant, "If you are dying, call us. Otherwise, we're busy." I hung up. I'm a physical therapist. I understand the body reasonably well. I knew that a blackout episode without prior history warranted a full workup. Blood sugar, cardiac monitoring, neurological screening. I knew the CT results would take time to come back. I knew I probably shouldn't be alone overnight. I also knew, and this is the thing that settled into me cold and quiet while I lay in that hospital bed staring at the beige wall, that my sister's DMB fee was $387. I know because my mother texted me 20 minutes later asking if I could Venmo Lena the money to cover it, since she was so stressed. I stared at that text for a long time. I did not respond. My CT results came back at 9:30. The attending physician, Dr. Time Whitfield, came in to explain them herself, which I think in retrospect was a sign of how serious she considered them. There was a small arteria venous malformation, essentially an abnormal tangle of blood vessels, near the base of my skull that had likely been there since birth. Asymptomatic until recently. The headaches I'd been having for weeks, the blacking out. These were symptoms. It hadn't ruptured. I was lucky. But I needed to be monitored closely. And depending on how the follow-up imaging looked, I might need intervention. She explained it in calm, clear language. She answered my questions. She was kind. When she left, I sat in the dark and I thought about the fact that I had been having headaches for 3 weeks and I had mentioned them to my mother twice. Once on the phone, once in passing when I'd visited for Sunday dinner, and both times she had said you need to drink more water and moved on. I thought about all the Sundays I'd driven 40 minutes each way to have dinner with my family, bringing wine and dessert, listening to my father's work complaints and my sister's drama, writing the check before I left. I thought about the last time anyone in my family had driven 40 minutes for me. I couldn't come up with an example. Courtney arrived at 10:15. She showed up with a tote bag containing a phone charger, a set of earbuds, a bag of salt and vinegar chips because she knows they are my comfort food, and a face that was doing the specific thing her face does when she's furious but trying not to show it so I didn't feel worse. She had driven 45 minutes in Wednesday night traffic from her apartment in Riverside. She sat down beside my bed and said, "Tell me everything." So I did. She didn't say anything dramatic when I finished. She just took my hand and said, "You know you don't owe them anything, right?" I said I knew. I didn't fully believe it yet, but I was starting to. My parents arrived the next morning at 10:40 a.m. Not first thing, as promised, 10:40. My father had a to-go coffee cup from a drive-thru, and my mother had her tote bag with the canvas handles she takes everywhere. They looked exactly the same as they always did, like nothing had happened, like it was any other Thursday. My father said, "How's the head?" I said, "I have a vascular malformation in my brain that could have killed me." He nodded like I had said I sprained my wrist playing tennis. My mother started asking the nursing staff questions, not about my condition, but about parking validation and whether the cafeteria had oatmeal. I watched her do this and felt something shift in me. Not dramatically. Not with fireworks. Just a quiet, certain movement, like a door closing. Lena did not come. She texted me at noon. Grom Grom told me, "That's so scary. Feel better," with 3 heart emojis. I texted back, "Thanks." I was discharged on Friday with a referral to a neurovascular specialist and a list of monitoring instructions. The plan was watchful waiting for now. The malformation was small and positioned in a way that made immediate intervention risky. But I needed to follow up aggressively, and I needed to eliminate stress where I could. That last part made me laugh a little, alone in my car in the hospital parking garage. Eliminate stress. Here is something about having a near-death experience, or something adjacent to one. It has a clarifying effect. Not immediately, not while you're in it, but in the weeks after, when the shock fades and the regular shape of your life comes back into focus, you start seeing things you've been choosing not to see. I saw the monthly transfers I was making to my parents' account. Small enough that I told myself they didn't matter, large enough that they added up to over $2,000 a year. I saw the Sunday dinners where I cooked and brought food and listened and was never once asked how I was doing. Really asked. I saw the birthday where Lena got a trip to Nashville paid for by our parents, and I got a Hallmark card signed by both of them. I saw all of it. And I saw myself. Performing okayness. Shrinking. Sending checks so that I could feel, for a few days, like maybe this month they'd see me. They didn't see me. I decided to stop making it so easy not to. 6 weeks after the accident, I stopped the monthly transfers. I didn't announce it. I didn't send a speech. I just stopped. The first month, my mother called mid-month and said there seemed to be an issue with the automatic payment. I said I'd stopped it. She asked why. I said I needed to redirect my finances toward my medical expenses, which was true. The specialist visits were not cheap, my insurance deductible was brutal, and I had no idea yet whether I'd eventually need a procedure that would wipe out my savings. She said she understood. She did not understand. I know this because she called my father into the conversation, and he asked if I was still seeing Dr. Whitfield, and I said yes, and he said, "Well, let us know if you need anything," in the tone people use when they are confident you will not actually ask. I said I would. I didn't need them to understand, I just needed to stop. The clarity had side effects I hadn't anticipated. I started sleeping better. The headaches, separate from the AVM, stress-related, Dr. Whitfield confirmed, decreased significantly. I started going to Courtney's place for Sunday dinners instead, her and her husband and their chaotic rescue dog and whoever else happened to show up, and I realized I had been quietly starving for exactly this. People who were happy to see me walk in the door. I told my therapist, yes, I started therapy, yes, it helped, yes, I wish I'd done it sooner, that I felt guilty for feeling better. She asked why. I said because my parents weren't bad people, they just loved Lena more. She asked if I thought those two things were mutually exclusive. I thought about it for a while. We talked about it for a few sessions. The dinner happened in January. My parents have a tradition on my grandmother's birthday. She passed 6 years ago, but they still mark the date with a family dinner, invite the cousins, make her recipes. It was always one of my favorite things about my family. I used to look forward to it. I almost didn't go that year, but my grandmother was someone who had actually seen me, who used to call just to ask about my week, who'd sent me a card when I passed my licensing exam, and I wanted to honor her, so I went. There were about 16 people there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, Lena's college friend who seemed to always be around lately, my parents' neighbor Hal, who my dad has golfed with for 20 years. Dinner was good. The pot roast was exactly right. I talked to my cousin about her kids and my uncle about his retirement plans, and I felt mostly okay. Then my father stood up to make a toast. He talked about my grandmother. Beautifully, actually. He's a good speaker when he wants to be, and he clearly meant it. He talked about her resilience, her warmth, how she built something from nothing. Everyone was quiet and attentive. Then he said, "She always said the most important thing was family, taking care of each other. And I think we do that." He looked around the table. "Your mom and I, we're so proud of how you girls have both found your way. Lena, you've really come into your own this past year. We're so proud of you." Lena beamed. She said thanks, Dad, and there were murmurs around the table. He sat down. I waited. He did not say my name. The table moved on. Someone asked Lena about the boutique. My mother started collecting plates. I sat there for a moment, and then something, not anger exactly, more like a long-held breath finally releasing, moved through me, and I said, clearly enough for the table to hear, "I want to say something too." Everyone looked at me. My mother paused with the plates. "I want to say something about taking care of each other," I said, "because I think that's worth talking about." My father said, "Vivi." "In October," I said, "I was in a car accident. I blacked out while driving. An EMT called Mom from the scene. I was taken to Mercy General. I was there for almost 3 hours before anyone reached out to check whether I was still alive." The table had gone completely still. "The reason no one came," I said, "is that Lena had received a notice about a license reinstatement fee. It was $387. That was the reason. I heard my Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, make a small sound. I was alone. Courtney drove 45 minutes to sit with me. She's not family, she's my friend. But she came." I looked at my parents. "You didn't." My mother said, "Vivi, this isn't the place. You asked me the same night to Venmo Lena the fee," I said. "While I was in the hospital, I didn't. And I've stopped the monthly transfers I was making to you. I should have done that sooner, and I'm not doing it anymore." I paused. "I love you both. I love Lena. But I spent a long time making it very easy for you not to see me, and I'm not going to do that anymore either." I picked up my napkin from my lap, folded it, set it beside my plate. "Grandma saw me," I said. "I think she'd have wanted to be at that hospital. That's who I'm toasting tonight." I raised my glass. A beat of silence. Then my Uncle Roy raised his. Then my cousin. Then Courtney, who I had texted that morning asking her to come with me because some part of me had known. Not the specifics, just the general shape of what I might need. My father didn't raise his glass. My mother was crying quietly. Not the angry kind of crying, I think. More the kind that happens when something true has been said aloud and there's no taking it back. Lena stared at her plate. I drank my wine. I'm not going to tell you my family transformed overnight, that my parents had a reckoning, that Lena apologized, that we all sat down and hashed it out and came out the other side closer and wiser. That's not what happened. What happened is that my Uncle Roy texted me the next day and said he'd had no idea and he was sorry, and if I ever needed anything to call him. My Aunt Patricia called my mother, and whatever they said to each other, I wasn't part of it. My father sent me a text 3 days later that said, "I know I've let you down. I'm sorry." It was 8 words. It was more than I expected. I don't know yet what to do with it. My mother called on a Sunday, not the following Sunday, but 2 weeks later, and she didn't try to explain or justify. She asked about my follow-up appointment. She asked how Courtney was doing. She asked if I'd eaten. It was a short call, 20 minutes, and at the end, she said, "I love you." And her voice cracked a little on it. I said, "I know, Mom. I love you too." I do. That's the complicated part. I love them. I just love myself a little more than I used to. The most recent imaging showed the malformation is stable. Dr. Whitfield says we continue monitoring. We're optimistic. Cautiously, reasonably, evidence-based optimistic. I bought myself a couch I'd been looking at for 2 years, terracotta velvet. Courtney came over when it was delivered and we sat on it and ate Indian takeout and watched 3 episodes of a show we've been working through, and I thought, this is it. This is the life I've been building without noticing. My niece Lena's daughter, 8 years old, who I adore without reservation, called me last week just to tell me about a project she was doing in school about animals. She'd chosen axolotls. She talked for 11 minutes. I looked it up afterward and learned more about axolotls than I expected to. She's the best person in our family, and she doesn't know it yet. I think she'll be okay. I think I'll be okay. I stopped waiting for my parents to finally see me the way I needed them to. It turns out that once you stop waiting, you have a lot more time. For Velda couches and axolotl facts and friends who drive 45 minutes on a Wednesday night because you are worth driving to. I am worth driving to. It took me 32 years and a malformation in my brain to understand that. But I got there. I've thought a lot about what actually changed that night at Mercy General. Not the diagnosis, though that changed everything too. But the thing that shifted inside me while I was lying in that bed alone, listening to the hum of the machines and waiting for someone who wasn't coming. I think what changed was that I finally stopped arguing with reality. For years, I had been working against a very simple fact. My parents loved Lena more than they loved me. Not more than they loved the idea of me, maybe. Not more than they loved having a daughter who paid her own bills and never caused trouble and quietly sent money every month. But more than they loved me, the actual person, the one who needed something back. I kept behaving as though if I gave enough, showed up enough, needed little enough, the equation would eventually balance. It never balanced. It was never going to balance. That's not how it works when the ledger is built on someone else's terms. There's a cause and effect to everything, and I don't mean that in any mystical way. I mean it practically. I kept giving and they kept not seeing me, not because they were monsters, but because I had taught them, through years of reliable behavior, that I did not require seeing. I was the low-maintenance daughter. I made it easy. Every time I swallowed my disappointment and sent the check anyway, I was communicating, this is acceptable. And so it continued. The night in the hospital, something in me finally understood that I had been an active participant in my own invisibility. That's not a comfortable thing to know about yourself, but it's useful. What I needed to develop, what I think a lot of people like me need to develop, is the intelligence to read a situation for what it actually is, not what we wish it were. I had all the information for years. I knew Lena got the trips and the toast at dinner, and the benefit of every doubt. I knew the checks I sent never came with gratitude, just with the next mention of something else they needed. I knew. I just kept interpreting it generously, kept finding explanations that let me stay comfortable, that let me keep loving my family without having to change anything about how I operated within it. That kind of willful misreading is not kindness. It's avoidance. And it costs you. It costs you Sunday afternoons you could have spent somewhere you were wanted. It costs you money you worked hard to earn. It costs you, eventually, some part of your sense of self, the part that knows you are worth showing up for. The other thing I learned is that courage is not dramatic. Standing up in front of my family at that dinner table was not a movie moment. My voice was steady, but my hands were not. I said what I said because I had finally run out of reasons not to. That's all courage ever really is. You run out of excuses to stay quiet, and so you speak. Courtney came. Dr. Whitfield sat with me and explained my own brain with patience and clarity. My Uncle Roy texted the next day. The people who showed up, showed up. And I learned to let that be enough. To stop measuring my worth by the people who didn't come and start paying attention to the ones who did. I'm not fully healed from any of this. I still feel the old pull sometimes. The urge to call my mother and fix things. To make it easier for everyone. To perform the version of myself that doesn't ask too much. But I catch it now. I notice it. And I make a different choice. That's the whole thing, really. You notice, and you choose differently.